What does it mean when you share data across apps in Zoho? So, within Zoho, you have a lot of different apps, and they're often dealing with similar information. For example, customer data, you're going to see in many different apps, especially the CRM, as well as your Books app, and possibly other your desk app, other apps where you're going to see that data. And you want to be able to share that data. So for example, if your sales team closes a deal and they need to send some information to accounting, say, we've closed this deal, please invoice the customer, and the accounting department works out of Zoho Books, we need data transfer between those two apps. And then also, if management wants to look at some in-depth reporting about the deals that have been closed in the CRM and then invoiced in Books, you want that data in analytics. So you might think that it's all just the same data, but it's not quite that simple. So the way this works is you're going to have different tables of data, and in some cases, different apps are going to be looking at the same table of data. So for example, with Zoho Inventory, Zoho Books, Zoho Commerce, the finance suite of apps within Zoho, they are all looking at the same table of data. So if I go in here and I make an edit to this inventory item, that edit is effectively it's happened in Zoho Books as well, because they're both different UIs, different user interfaces that look at the same data. Now, if I go into Zoho CRM and I make an edit to a customer, that also will probably be reflected in Zoho Books, but it's not the same thing. What's happening between Zoho CRM, and this is actually more complicated, but for customers, what happens between Zoho CRM and Zoho, the finance suite, Books, Inventory, etc., is there's a sync. So as soon as I make an edit to a customer in Zoho CRM, it's going to push that information into Zoho Books, and Zoho Books customers will look the same. But it's two different tables of data. So what can happen is occasionally these syncs will fail. It's not common in the Zoho CRM, Zoho Books sync, but it can definitely happen. And another thing can happen is someone can turn off the sync or change the sync settings. Maybe you have a sync between your Zoho Books customers and your Zoho CRM customers, but when that sync was set up, you didn't have all the fields. So one thing you can do in Zoho CRM and other Zoho apps is you can customize them. So I could go into the back end of my Zoho deals and I could add a new field. So for example, if I wanted a region field, or if I wanted a field that, any information that I might want to store about a deal that's not part of the sort of standard information, like if I'm a real estate company and I want to record information about different kinds of risks. So this property has a slight risk of floodplain. This property has a slight risk of fire because it's on the edge of a forest or something. That kind of information wouldn't necessarily be in the default use of Zoho. So you might add that information as a special field in the deal or in the account. And that information wouldn't necessarily come over in the sync to Zoho Books, because you'd also have to create that field in Zoho Books, and you'd have to tell the sync, this is part of the information that I want coming over. So the basic sync is going to be set up with, your standard information, email address, phone number, street address. Other information that you typically collect about customers is going to be part of a standard sync, but then if you have extra information, it won't be part of that sync. Whereas if you were to create a custom field in Zoho Books and start populating it with information, that information would already be showing up in your Zoho inventory information as a custom field, because they share the same table. They're not syncing data, they're looking at the same data. So the sync between Zoho CRM and the Zoho Finance Suite is pretty good. It usually captures the information. You don't have a lot of risk there of information loss. And another thing is that within Zoho CRM, if you've set up the connection with Zoho Books, the Zoho Finance Suite, you're going to have this Zoho Finance set of apps. And this is actually a window directly into Zoho Books data. So again, this isn't a separate database or a separate table that syncs with Zoho Books data. I'm actually looking at Zoho Books data here. It's a different UI, a different user interface, but for these lines, I'm looking at the same information as I would be within Zoho Books. So this is a way that you can have salespeople with access to the CRM doing things like creating estimates and invoices, which are immediately part of the books environment where members of the accounting team can see and manipulate them. So that's the connection between Zoho Books and Zoho CRM. Now, another connection that's really important and powerful is your connection to Zoho Analytics. So again, Zoho Analytics has a separate table, separate data, but what it does is it takes a straight copy. So when you take data from, say, the CRM or books into Zoho Analytics, it's a copy, and the data validity within Analytics is really high. I can't change the data in Analytics. That's a copy of the CRM data, and I can manipulate it, I can create queries off it, I can create reporting off of it, but this is a sort of a high fidelity copy of the information from the source, and you can get data into Analytics from a lot of different sources. Now, you're not going to manipulate the data in Analytics, and it's much more difficult to get data out of Analytics. You can pull data in Analytics in a variety of ways, but you're usually not going to have it as part of your sort of working system. Analytics is built as a reporting tool, so it's sort of the last stop for the information. Information gets created and manipulated in apps like Zoho CRM, Zoho Books, Zoho Desk, then it lands in Analytics where it can be reported on. The other thing to note about data in Analytics is it's not going to be real time, so you can have syncs set up, and those syncs can occur as often as once an hour, but you might have data in Analytics that's 45 minutes old, and depending on your use case, that might or might not matter. Usually with a reporting function, you don't have too much to worry about with an hour delay on data, but there might be some kind of reporting use cases where that's not an acceptable delay, and then you have to use sort of the reporting functions directly within those databases. So those are the syncs between those apps. Now, there's some other syncs you can set up in Zoho. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but there's a couple more that are sort of important to note. So Zoho also has marketing software. So campaigns and marketing automation are two pieces of software you can set up for sending email blasts or social media blasts to customers. And it's good to have that information. Obviously, you want up-to-date customer information in Zoho campaigns when you're doing that. And you can set up a sync between Zoho CRM and Zoho campaigns, but it works a little differently than the sync between Zoho CRM and Zoho Books. And it can fail in sort of interesting ways. So what you can have with Zoho CRM and Zoho campaigns is I make an edit to a record in Zoho CRM. So say I change the name of a customer, or another piece of sort of relevant information that can come over into campaigns. But sometimes some kinds of edits, Zoho Campaigns doesn't register. So for example, if you're merging records, so if you have several records in Zoho CRM and they're actually the same person, you just had multiple people adding data and they overlapped, so you have 3 different customers in here with the same email address, you can merge those records together in the CRM. Campaigns might not recognize the data that you come out with. So that's one area you have to be careful. And then sometimes with APIs and other edits to CRM data, it doesn't show up in campaigns. And the interesting thing about the sync to Zoho between CRM and campaigns is it's very field-based. So if I go in, and so for example, if this is a record that I created by merging multiple records, and some of the information here is wrong, and I change one of the other pieces of information, what Campaigns is going to receive is it's going to receive a message that says the mobile number has changed to this, and it'll change the mobile number in there. So anytime you're doing a manual edit, so a user goes in and manipulates data in the CRM, you're going to get a high fidelity push over to the Campaigns. You don't have to worry about that kind of data not arriving in Campaigns. But the problem is it's only looking at that one piece of data. So say earlier I'd somehow gotten the wrong name because I merged 2 records, and now I have the correct name in the CRM. That name might not have pushed over to Campaigns, and when I update this mobile number, the mobile number is going to update in Campaigns, but it's not looking at the rest of the record. Some users may have experience with this kind of thing, and they may think if I just edit a field in the record, it'll push everything over. That doesn't happen in the CRM to Campaigns sync. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and it can cause a little bit of problems. It's not super common, but it's something to be aware of. And then the last kind of sync that you might be having experience with is the sort of the developer setup sync. So you can create your own information push between different apps. So I could create a workflow in Zoho CRM that pushes information into another record in the CRM. It might push into Campaigns. It might push into Books or Flow or Desk or Zoho Creator. And that's a kind of sync because I can say, okay, anytime a record in Contacts is manipulated in any way, take all of that information and copy it into my Creator instance. So in that way, you can create a fairly good live sync between Zoho CRM and that Zoho Creator instance. But these kinds of put together things don't always do everything you might hope they would. So for example, if I were to delete a contact in Zoho CRM, it wouldn't push into my Creator app because the way these workflows work in Zoho CRM is it says, okay, activate on delete. Okay, when a record is deleted, go find that record in the Campaigns and delete it as well. The problem is when you delete a record, the record gets deleted and then any on delete workflows run. So what the on delete workflow is going to do is it's going to say, okay, I need to find the record in the Creator app that matches the one that was just deleted. What information do I have to look up the record in Creator? I don't have any information because the record that was just deleted was just deleted and I can't look at its information anymore. So now I don't know what record to look up, so I don't know what record to delete, and I'm going to fail. So that's the kind of situation that if you have sort of the live sync set up between Zoho CRM and Zoho Books, you can rely on things like deletion taking place across all the records. If I delete a record out of the CRM and I've got a sync with Zoho Analytics, that record's going to disappear from the analytics if I've set it up properly. If I delete a record from CRM, it's also going to delete from Books, again, if the settings are set up. But with sort of a personal built, a developer built delete can be missed. So those are the kinds of things you have to watch out for with syncs and data collection. And that's the kind of thing where it's you have to look at it and you have to know what you're doing, but if you understand the kinds of problems that can happen, you can stay out of a lot of trouble. So just be aware of these kinds of sync options. And if you have any other questions, I'm Kevin at BMI and happy to try and help you out with any questions you have.